Hello, friends and foes. Yeah, I'm talking to everybody who turned around a February reading wrap-up before the end of February. I woke up on the morning of the 28th and there were February reading wrap-ups on my feed. The body wasn't even cold and we were already talking about her. I'm the kind of person that a few days into March, I still think it's February because February, you know, she's a short month, poor thing. So that's why this video is probably coming out on March 3rd or 4th because I need an extra day. Also, February felt like it went by in the blink of an eye. January felt like forever. So anyways, this is gonna be a non-spoiler review of the 8 books I've read so far this year. I saw someone else do this literally last night after I had finished writing my notes up for this video. I'll pop it up here. I can't remember her name. But I love watching her, but I'll put her up here. I'll link the video that I saw down below just so you can also see it. She does bi-monthly reading wrap-ups, which I think is so fun. I think I'm gonna do that as well, only because I don't think I read that much in the course of a month to warrant a whole video. So every 2 months feels like the vibe. I'm not even gonna play. It's been an amazing 2 months of reading. 6 out of these 8 books were 4 stars and above, and the 2 outliers that were 3.5 stars, that's still a good time to me. I like to podcast these kinds of videos, so feel free to throw it on while you're doing your dishes, maybe your laundry, maybe driving to work. And if you're just watching me speak for the next 20-ish minutes, hi, I'm sipping on a Coke Zero. Are you a Coke Zero person or are you a Diet Coke person? Let me know in the comments. I've realized that the Coke Zero is also probably a bad decision because it might make me burp a lot. But it's what I'm in the mood for, so that's what I'm gonna do. We started the year off so strong with Heartless Hunter by Kristen Ciccarelli, the first book in the Crimson Moth duology. I was dutifully watching every book miss log at the end of 2024, and I think it was Maddie's review of Heartless Hunter that got me to smash that borrow button on the Libby app. And let me tell you, it did not disappoint. I'll give you a bit of a synopsis before going into my thoughts. Set in the fictional island of the New Republic, which feels very like the 1800s, very dark Bridgerton with all the balls, estates, and powerful families. This society living on this island was once ruled by a monarchy of witches that has been overthrown in a very bloody revolution. Our female main character, Rune Winters, is a wealthy, bubbly socialite by day and the vigilante Crimson Moth by night, who is assumed to be a witch, and she is a witch. As the Crimson Moth, Rune is on a mission to save witches from being purged, and things really start heating up when a mission goes wrong at the beginning of the story. She's forced to get closer to Gideon Sharp, a notorious witch hunter. Does this sound like enemies to lovers to you? Yeah, that's because it is. And as a fellow enemies to lovers lover, I'm here to tell you that this is one of the best instances of this trope I have ever witnessed on paper, or on e-reader, I guess. Back to Gideon. Of course, he's very skeptical of Rune as she tries to get closer to him, and he becomes especially suspicious when he gets a tip that witches have been escaping to the mainland on Rune's cargo ships. He thinks that that's all the evidence he needs to prove that she's the Crimson Moth. But of course it's not. Of course he needs more proof. Entering on stage right is my favorite character in this story, Harrow, who is Gideon's informant, and who has convinced Gideon that the proof he needs to turn Rune in as a witch / the Crimson Moth is to find her casting scars, which is irrefutable proof that someone is a witch. In this story, they use blood magic to cast spells, and every time they use their blood, witches are left with these silver casting scars. So Harrow is like, Gideon, oh no, you need to see these scars for yourself, and she's probably hiding them really well. If she's the Crimson Moth, of course she's not gonna get caught. So you probably have to get her naked. Oh no. You have to seduce her. Oh no. It's so cheesy and it's so tropey and cheesy, and I cannot stress this enough. It's done so well. Kristen Ciccarelli has studied these tropes and has made them work. Sometimes I feel like novels tout the enemies to lovers tag almost kind of in a clickbaity way. Like you get maybe 50 pages into the story and you can very immediately tell that the characters aren't really enemies at all. They kind of just have a little bit of beef with each other, and that doesn't really scratch that itch for me. Rune and Gideon have so much history and so much buried in their pasts and so many reasons and motivations to absolutely hate each other that the only reason they get a chance to know one another is because they have ulterior motives. This obviously starts off so toxic and manipulative, and it's very cat and mouse, and there are multiple close calls that had me holding my breath for whole chapters. I didn't know I could hold my breath that long, but you know, maybe I can set a world record now. But as they court each other, they start to reveal things that make them feel empathetic to one another, which eventually has them falling for each other. But they're also constantly questioning what's real and what's fake. It's dual point of view, so you're getting Rune questioning whether or not Gideon actually likes her, or if he's just getting close to her to try and catch her. And then you flip to the next chapter, and Gideon is pulling the most romantic gesture ever, but he's actively lying to himself, being like, oh, this is just for the job. I don't actually think she's the most beautiful woman, the most caring and smart woman I have ever met. Please just kiss. Their characterization and the strong use of these tropes as plot devices is really what made this story so great for me and so fun. I had such a good time reading this. I had genuine fun, and it has set the tone for the beginning of a really great reading year for me so far. Fingers crossed. Nobody jinx it. Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi is a collection of 4 short stories revolving around a unique cafe with a magical twist. It allows customers to travel back in time. The catch, because of course there has to be one, is that they must sit in a particular seat and they can only interact with people who've been in the cafe before, and they must return to the present time before the coffee gets cold. I picked up this book as part of my 25 books for 2025 reading list, having rolled it over from 2024. And while the stories were undeniably moving, I found the characters to be a bit archetypal, which the more I think about it, that was probably the point, but it made for a repetitive plot. Someone travels back in time, learns the solution they're looking for is not in the past, and then they return to the present with a different outlook on life and a resolve to live in the present. Rinse and repeat. In that sense, it's a cozy story because you kind of know what to expect, but still, it was a little bit repetitive for me. Now, the setting is the highlight of the book for me. We get extensive, rich descriptions about the 100-year-old cafe where this story takes place. Wow, see, I told you. I told you the Coke Zero was going to be a dangerous decision. Let's see, where were we? We get extensive, rich descriptions about the 100-year-old cafe where the story takes place, with the ancient decor that has developed a fine patina, about the temperature in the cafe never being too hot or too cold. There's 3 clocks in the cafe that all have the wrong time. It's very mysterious, and probably one of the only reasons I would keep going with this series. Each short story revealed a little more about the cafe, and given the repetitive nature of this collection of stories, I feel like in the sequels to Before the Coffee Gets Cold, each story would probably reveal a little sliver of information about the cafe. I don't know. We'll see if I keep going. Despite the simplicity of the writing, the overall message hit me. Don't take time for granted, and don't let regret keep you stuck. A simple, reflective read. I don't know if this is going to piss you off or not, but I really can't say much about this book, which is Dark Age by Pierce Brown. I simply cannot. Anything I say could be a spoiler because this is book 5 of a soon-to-be 7 book series. So I'm going to stick to the safe zones. First off, I can't recommend Red Rising enough. I'm feeling like a broken record at this point, and I haven't even been in the bookish space for even 2 months at this point. But Red Rising is phenomenal as a book and as a trilogy. I get that some people might not agree, and that's okay. Now, if you finished the trilogy and you liked it and you're on the fence about continuing with the rest of the series, all I have to say is do it. Iron Gold was fantastic and ended on insane cliffhangers. Yes, you heard that right. Plural, multiple cliffhangers. Now, Dark Age. The best way I can describe this book is a spiral. We are spiraling for 700 pages straight. Nothing good is happening. There is violence. Everything is going up in flames. Everyone is dying, and we don't have a chance to mourn or even think about what we just read, because once you flip the page, something worse has already happened. And you gotta process that too. It's brave to write something like this because it puts all your characters, even the good ones that you've been rooting for thousands of pages, in positions where they make bad, sometimes absolutely atrocious choices. But yeah, drop me in a parallel universe, blindfold me, spin me around, and put something written by Pierce Brown in front of me, and I'll know it by the end of the first sentence. His writing has his signature stamped on each word, and authors that write like that usually get really high ratings for me. But yeah, Dark Age was a 5-star read for me, despite being one of the saddest books I'll probably ever read in my lifetime. Hidden Pictures follows Mallory, a young woman who lands a job as a live-in nanny for a wealthy family. She's going to be taking care of their only son, Teddy, who seems like a sweet kid with a creepy imaginary friend that he includes in his drawings sometimes. And the drawings start off very cute and very much something a child would draw, like animals, things that he did during the day, etc. And then they turn into some disturbing scenes, like someone getting dragged through the woods, as an example. Yeah. And as a big fan of the horror thriller genre, specifically in movies, I don't really pick up horror thriller books that often, and that's not because I dislike them, it's just a pattern, I guess. But I do enjoy horror thriller movies. This book felt really cinematic. Jason Rekulak did a great job of developing this setting almost like a director would. This is set in a big old house in rich suburban New Jersey, and it's painted this light yellow with white trim, and the lawn is described as freshly mowed and springy, and they have a heated pool and this modern sprawling kitchen with fresh organic groceries in the fridge. I could go on. I felt like there was an establishing shot playing in my brain. And it is the perfect backdrop for a horrific twist. And this feels like horror fiction written by a fan of it. Jason Rekulak clearly knows the genre and its expectations. For example, Mallory is a recovering addict, and that's information that we get from page 1. And since this is a thriller, you know that piece of her character is gonna come back somehow in a horror thriller way. That doesn't just get thrown in there for fun. There are multiple twists, some that I saw coming, some that I could never imagine, and funny enough, that's why I'm docking about half a star for this book. Specifically in the last 80 to 100 pages, I felt like twists were getting thrown at me left and right. And in the moment, it was absolutely gripping, and I was on the edge of my seat, but thinking back, I think we could have cut back on maybe like 2 of the 30 twists that happened in this book, and it would have been stronger for it. Overall, fabulous pacing, believable characters, a little romantic subplot that was very sweet, and a great setting. And creepy drawings. They're actually included in there. Some of those did jump scare me.
Okay, so the first night is never usually that bad in any of the games, so I'll play through.
As I flipped the page and there was just creepy drawing on the page. Yeah. Everyone say hello to one of my new favorite rom-coms, The Paradise Problem by Christina Lauren. My first Christina Lauren, my second 5-star read of the year, and we are only in February. I love this for me. I love it. I get the hype. I get why they have 20 New York Times bestsellers. Our two main characters, Anna and Liam, are thrown together in the most unexpected of ways. Cough, cough. Marriage of convenience, cough, cough. Anna and Liam got married 5 years prior to the events of The Paradise Problem to kind of scam their university's housing system. Marital housing was much cheaper than regular housing, and they were both in a little bit of a pinch for money. So they lived together for 2 years, barely crossing paths, and then they went their separate ways and amicably divorced. Or they both thought. Now, 5 years after their fateful marriage, they are brought together again. Liam needs Anna to accompany him to a private island for his sister's birthday because his family still thinks that they're together. And Anna goes along with it because Liam has agreed to pay her an amount of money he wouldn't say no to, but would make him sweat. It's a lot of money. Life-changing money for her. And Liam needs to convince his family that they've been married for 5 years because that's the only way that he's gonna access like another level of his inheritance. He's about to inherit like multiple millions of dollars. It's a crazy amount of money. I really liked the way their relationship progressed. Some people will say this is too lusty, but honestly, I was okay with it. Yeah, they had a lot of upfront physical attraction, but they didn't skip any of the emotional milestones, I don't think. And hey, this is a book about two hot people on a private island doing hot people things. There was only one bed. They went to lavish parties and wore ridiculous designer clothes, and there was insane amounts of money. If it wasn't sexy, it would be weird. But like any good romance book, that's all just icing on the cake. The real substance came from how complex Anna and Liam were as characters, and how they brought out the best in each other when they came together as a team and ultimately as a couple. And there was a whole critique on excessive wealth and resource hoarding that played out over one brunch scene that left me absolutely reeling. Like, I didn't expect it to go there, but the story had been building up to a moment like that for a while, and the payoff was intense. So yeah, just your average spicy poolside read with a side of social commentary. I enjoyed it a ton. 5 freaking stars. the newest series I've started, and my latest obsession is Immortal Dark by Tigest Girma. We're following Hidan Adane, who is an orphaned heiress, and she suspects that the vampire bound to her family, Susenyo Seged, kidnapped her sister June. To get her back, Hidan has no choice but to enroll in Uxley University, a prestigious school where humans and vampires coexist, and where she's forced to live with Susenyo himself. In order to fully step into her power as heiress of the Adane house, Hidan has to pass the very cutthroat course of Draenachti, where humans learn the origins of the deal struck up between humans and vampires and learn how to maintain that relationship for the betterment of both species. That's where the Dark Academia comes in. There are actual classes on like arcane, vampire, human philosophy, tight-knit eclectic study groups, late night cramming in an ancient library, and then walking home through a mist-shrouded campus. Cults. A murder. Yeah, there's lots of mysteries at Uxley, and as Hidan is trying to gather her bearings in this world that she's never really been a part of, and a world that she didn't want to be a part of, weird things are happening that she finds herself in the smack dam middle of. This story has an entirely black cast of characters. The author, Tigest Girma, is an Ethiopian writer based in Melbourne, Australia, and she really brought in the perspective of East African myths to the fantasy world that's nothing like I've ever read before. On a personal note, I especially connected to Hidan and her struggles feeling like an outsider in her own culture. She grew up being told not to practice her native language, to fear and hate vampires, which are a big part of her family's history. And when going to Uxley becomes her only option in finding her sister, she's confronted with how much she's been separated from her roots. I feel like that sometimes in Latin and Hispanic spaces. My family is Cuban, but I grew up outside of Cuba for the most part, so my cultural upbringing is a hybrid of American and old Cuban, but mostly American. So again, when I step into those Latin and Hispanic spaces, mostly on social media, but sometimes out in the world, like at a restaurant or at a grocery store, I feel like I'm catching maybe 15% of the conversation in terms of context, not the language. My parents thankfully helped me keep my Spanish. But yeah, I felt for Hidan when she was going through that disconnect. It's definitely frustrating sometimes, but she's got to work through it. She's very motivated to find her sister, her only living family, and sometimes she has to suck it up and work with Susenyos. Oh no, she has to put up with the hot vampire that's super mysterious and very well read and has a penchant for history and has a cute nickname for her. Oh no. Woe is me. Again, this is the first book in a trilogy. The sequel comes out later this year, so I'm guarding my heart against these characters and their relationships. This is a very cutthroat story with a lot of twists, and a lot of things are yet to be revealed, so I'm trying not to get attached to anyone. I docked a few points on my total rating because there was some funky pacing, I would say, in the last arc. Some plot points were resolved, but then we got like 3 new twists thrown in, and I get that's meant to carry us through the rest of the trilogy, but it did kind of take me out of the story because it felt like it was just chucked in there. The rest of the time though, the other 300-ish pages, I was locked in. This was an awesome read, and again, I'm so excited. I'm so excited for the second book. Similar to Before the Coffee Gets Cold, How to Live Safely in a Science Fictional Universe by Charles Yu was on my TBR for 2024, and I didn't get to it, so I rolled it over into my 25 books for 2025 list. Charles Yu also wrote Interior Chinatown, which was big on Book Talk back in 2021 or 2022, and it was the book that got me back into reading regularly. So yeah, Charles Yu is a solid author for me. He's in a league of his own, at least for me. I haven't found any other author that writes like he does. And similar to what I said about Pierce Brown, Charles Yu has his signature stamped on every word he writes. His work is quick, witty, and biting, very stream of conscience. Some sentences run for like a page and a half, and you don't even feel it because it's like you're talking to yourself in your brain, which you kind of are when you're reading, but it's like he's talking to you in your brain. And so funny. He handles a lot of themes with humor, themes of loneliness, struggles with self-identity, with intimacy, family struggles, and generational conflict. He manages to talk about it all with this really sarcastic, dry humor that's just my type of humor. What's also unique about his books is that they're formatted so cleverly and in a way that mirrors the story that's being told on the page. So How to Live Safely in a Science Fictional Universe reads like an instruction manual, with Charles Yu's thoughts and notes written into the margins. Interior Chinatown someone reads like a script for a movie, show, or play, and I love that. I eat that up every single time. I realize that I've waxed poetic about Charles Yu's style, and I haven't actually told you about what the book is about, so here you go. In this story, Charles Yu, yeah, he writes himself into his stories, main character energy, I guess, is a time travel repairman in Minor Universe 31, a place where anyone can buy a time travel machine. When he's not rescuing clients from themselves, he's searching for his missing father, the man who invented time travel. The cast of characters also includes his melancholy AI assistant, Tammy, and an imaginary but technically real dog. The whole story takes a turn when he stumbles on a book written by his future self, which should have all the answers he's looking for, but obviously it's not that easy. On another personal note, this story also hit really hard for me. I guess every book that I picked up in the last few weeks has just been like knife to the heart. He writes a lot about his dad here. Obviously, it's the story of a son looking for his father, and his dad reminds me a lot of my dad and my experience as a child of immigrant parents. The metaphor of this science fictional universe and this dad who invented time travel is very clever, but also, I think, over-explained. But I think it's because it's something that I could relate to. For someone who has had a different life experience and doesn't really get the metaphor from the drop, he does explain it at the end, which is why I docked a few points here. I feel like it could have been stronger if it had just been left up to interpretation, but that's my opinion. Again, it's a very clever metaphor and one that I didn't expect included in this story. The synopsis is very unassuming when it comes to that. But yeah, I never see this book get recommended. It's a relatively short read, just over 200 pages. And although I am biased, I think objectively, Charles Yu is a very strong writer. I'd read anything he puts out. And apparently I'd watch anything he puts out because he wrote for the show Westworld on HBO, and that was one of my favorite shows a few years ago. I think seasons 1 and seasons 2 are good. I feel like it got into season 3 and it sort of lost the plot. Deep End came out in February, and I haven't been able to get my hands on it yet, so I went for Check and Mate because it was immediately available through Libby. I've figured out that my reading pattern is pretty much 2 to 3 fantasy, sci-fi, general fiction, sometimes thriller books, and then 1 purely romance book to reset me, to really grease the gears and keep me out of a slump. So this was it. This was said romance book. In Check and Mate, Mallory Greenleaf, second Mallory we read about. Also, pause. I forgot to mention this, but in Hidden Pictures and then in The Paradise Problem, there was both mention of TikTok and The Wizard of Oz. 2 books that I read back to back, both mentioned TikTok and The Wizard of Oz. And now Hidden Pictures, main character Mallory, Check and Mate, main character Mallory. What's going on? What's going on, guys? All right, everybody's like, put the fries in the bag. Just get back to talking about Check and Mate. In Check and Mate, Mallory Greenleaf swore off chess after it tore her family apart. Very dramatic, I know. But when she reluctantly enters a charity tournament, she stuns everyone, including herself, by defeating the chess world champion, Nolan Sawyer. Mallory is, again, reluctantly drawn into the world of chess competitions when she finds out how much money she could make. Life-changing money, since she has become the sole breadwinner for her family at like 18 years old. She starts climbing the ranks, battling fierce competition, meanwhile trying to avoid Nolan, who is figuratively and sometimes actually lurking in the shadows, like on the outskirts of her chess matches. I enjoyed this a lot and read like 80% of it in one sitting. This was one of those reading until 2 a.m. moments for me. And Allie did it again. She wrote 2 broken, complex, human characters that come together to challenge each other to grow. Similar to facing down a master chess opponent, Allie is 10 steps ahead of us at all times, developing the plot elegantly, and I really just enjoyed being along for the ride. One of the main criticisms I see of this book is that it's a little too lusty, which is why I put it off for a while, honestly. But now that I have read it, I can say that people are just uncomfortable when a female main character is secure in her sexuality. Mallory knows what she wants. She's very logic driven when it comes to decisions in her life, and she sees intimacy in a way that is usually not portrayed in female main characters. Now for YA, yeah, it could be a little too lusty. I don't know anymore. The YA genre is a mess when it comes to that kind of stuff, so to each their own, but I wasn't too offended. Ali Hazelwood continues to be my comfort romance writer. If you told that to Maria 3 years ago, she wouldn't believe you, but hey, you live and you learn and you change and you grow. And that's it. The 8 books I've read so far this year. And as of today, I am 60 days into this year-long book buying ban, still going strong. I've felt absolutely no temptation to purchase a book at all, none at all. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more bookish content whenever. You can also follow me over on Fable, where we can chat about books, or on TikTok, where I'm having a silly goofy time. I'll leave the links to all that in the description below, but it's the same handle as this channel, Biblicore and Mint. See you next time. Happy reading.